Greetings. The next section of this particular module focuses on accommodations and modifications. So what does the law say in reference to accommodations and modifications? Well, the law says that we must provide accommodations and modifications to make sure that students with disabilities have access to an appropriate education program. And so when we look at that, we look at the Americans with Disabilities Act, which indicates that we must provide accommodations to every individual that has a disability. Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act also extends accommodations for individuals with disabilities. And finally, we know in our public schools, we must provide accommodations as identified in the Individualized Education Program under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. So legally, we do have a responsibility to provide accommodations. So the standard is not negotiable, but the road to it is. And so if we think about reaching a particular goal or a particular standard, we understand that how we reach that standard can vary. So if we're looking at a destination, how we get to a particular destination can vary, whether we are simply taking the highway or we're taking streets. But how we get to that destination can vary. The same is applicable to our students. Now, there are differences between accommodations and modifications. Accommodations help provide access to reach a particular standard, whereas modifications are changes to a standard. There are different types of accommodations and modifications, and these are the 5 types that we will unpack. We will look at scheduling, setting, materials, instruction, and student response. These are examples of some scheduling accommodations, giving the student extra time to complete assignments or tests, or spreading testing sessions over several days. As we look at a setting example, allowing students to work in a small group. Also, allowing students to work one-on-one with their instructor. So both of these are just different types of settings that might be best to allow our students with disabilities to reach the standard. Materials example, so providing audio tape lectures or books, giving copies of the teacher's lecture notes, and for some students, allowing them to use large print books, Braille, or books on CD. So these are all different types of materials that may be beneficial for our students with disabilities. Here's an example for instruction, or examples for instructions to reduce the difficulty of assignments or the reading level, and in some cases to allow students to use peer tutors. And finally, student response examples. So allowing students to give a response orally or through dictation, using a word processor for written work, or using sign language, a communication device, Braille, or native language, if not English. So these are 5 different types of accommodations that help students reach the standard. And so we understand that many of our students may have difficulties and there are barriers in their way from reaching a particular standard. And it is our job as educators to help those students get over those particular barriers. We understand that there are several students that they will be able to jump over those barriers at any given time, but there's some students that need assistance. So again, it's very important that we figure out ways to help students reach those standards and to remove any barriers in their way. So we've reached our next checkpoint. So please go ahead and answer the questions that follow in relation to accommodations and modifications.